Who was Mary Surratt, the first woman to be executed by the US government? On July 7, 1865, 4 condemned criminals were marched in chains, where they were hung. All 4 were executed for their connection to assassin John Wilkes Booth, although their role in the plot to kill President Lincoln is still widely debated and even forgotten. One of the 4, Mary Surratt, was also the first woman ever executed by the American government, a move that proved to be highly controversial. At the time, even Surratt's own executioner was shocked at the order, and after her execution, many Americans expressed unease about her death. Pleas to commute her sentence to life in prison fell on deaf ears, waved away by President Andrew Johnson, who was content to let her hang. To this day, Surratt's guilt has been called into question, partly because she swore she was innocent right up to the moment of her death. But how did Mary Surratt end up on the scaffold? After becoming widowed, she rented out her Maryland farm and tavern and began running a boarding house in Washington, D.C. to make ends meet. The house was situated at a convenient spot for sending urgent communications, and pretty soon, Confederate agents began showing up there, and Mary's son John was at the very center of the spiderweb that began to form around the Surratt boarding house. While some historians have speculated that Mary may have been innocent, her son John Surratt was undeniably guilty. During the Civil War, John began mailing messages on behalf of the Confederate side, and he developed a number of ingenious methods for hiding secret mail. John heartily enjoyed his time as an agent, commenting after the war that it was a fascinating life to me. It seemed as if I could not do too much nor run too great a risk. Through his secretive activities, John Surratt soon got to know John Wilkes Booth, who became a regular at the boarding house. Before long, John Surratt was personally involved in a plan to kidnap the president, a plot that would eventually turn into murder. Although he admitted his involvement in the plot years after the assassination, unlike his mother, he would get off scot-free. So why were fingers pointed at Mary Surratt? After the murder of Lincoln was carried out, Booth escaped the theatre but was later gunned down while hiding out in a barn. Investigators discovered the Surratt boarding house's role in the plot straight away, and after they caught one of the plotters there, Lewis Payne, Mary was arrested. John Surratt, on the other hand, already a suspect for a different crime, had gotten the hell out of Dodge. He would run and keep running to Canada, to Rome, and even to Egypt. Although the authorities would catch up with him eventually, in the immediate aftermath of the murder, Mary was the one left to endure the wrath of a country in mourning. Although Mary protested that she knew nothing about what the men were actually up to, a tavern keeper who leased the property from her claimed that she was directly involved, reporting that Mary had asked him to prepare weapons for Booth and another accomplice on the day of the murder. To prevent any trouble, those in question were tried in a military court rather than a normal jury, and there they were found guilty and sentenced to hang. Whether or not the tavern keeper's testimony proved her guilty, Mary's friendly connection to the conspirators certainly looked pretty suspicious. Booth and Mary had gotten on particularly well, and the two had sometimes hung out socially, independent of the others. While some have claimed that the trial was a farce and should have not been carried out by the military, the court actually asked that Surratt be shown mercy. After all, no woman had ever been executed by the US government before. 5 of the 9 commissioners recommended leniency. President Andrew Johnson, on the other hand, took a hard line on the issue, famously stating that Mary had kept the nest that hatched the egg. Some of Mary's supporters came forward to defend her at the trial, including several priests. Her most loyal defender, however, was her daughter Anna, who stood outside the White House demanding to see the president on her mother's behalf, a request that was denied. All hopes lost, Mary was marched to the scaffold dressed in black. Before she dropped, she's reported to have said, "Don't let me fall, hold on. Mary's son John, nowhere to be seen, was described as a coward. After his mother's death, John Surratt was dragged back to the States from Egypt in 1867, but he was acquitted after being tried by an ordinary jury. Among historians, the jury is still out as to Mary's guilt.